I have to record that video. But I can do it later. I'm not in the mood for it right now anyway. Oh, look, the floor is all dirty. I should vacuum the apartment. Oh, look, the lion is here. Hello, lion. We tend to put unpleasant activities off until a later date. But why do we do that? And when does procrastination become a problem? We'll find out today. Welcome to the Soft Skill channel. My name is Sebastian Jung and today we discuss procrastination. This will be a bit of a two-part video because today we will try to figure out what procrastination is, where it comes from and how it becomes a problem. And next week in the book review, I will show you an anti-procrastination program that can help you get rid of procrastination. So, we put off an unpleasant activity, an unpleasant task, and do something nice instead. This is quite usual and no immediate cause for concern because everybody does this every now and then. But when does procrastination become a problem? The important question is whether it is a problem for you, whether you suffer from it. For example, if your thoughts are constantly focused on the things you still need to do and on the procrastination, and if you have anxieties and worries about the negative results your procrastination might have, if maybe you have negative thoughts about yourself, such as, oh, I had intended to do it, but I didn't do it again, I never get things done, I'm useless, this would be quite a strong indicator that procrastination has become a problem. Another strong indicator is if you cannot enjoy your spare time anymore because you are constantly thinking about all the things you still need to do and you have a feeling that you don't really deserve spare time because all the things that are left to do. And of course, it is a strong indicator if your procrastination has already started causing damages for you. For example, if your relationships suffer due to procrastination, if you run into trouble at work or in your studies or whatever you do at the moment, or in your day-to-day life, for example, if you get in trouble because you didn't pay bills on time or things like that. In such cases, procrastination has become a serious problem. But what does that mean? Is it a kind of illness, a kind of disorder? I rely primarily on this book today. Sorry. Procrastination, a German book by Anna Höcker, Margareta Engberding, and Fred Rist. This is a psychological book, a psychological manual for therapists that describes how to help patients who suffer from procrastination. Now, Höcker, Engberding, and Rist claim that procrastination is an individual disorder and that the symptoms and problems cannot be sufficiently explained by other disorders, and that it can become a problem so severe that it warrants treatment. However, the big classification systems so far don't consider procrastination as an individual disorder. We have the ICD, you might have heard of that before, the International Statistical Classification of Diseases and Related Health Problems, that is published by the World Health Organization. And this is basically a list of all officially recognized illnesses and disorders and the corresponding symptoms. And a similar classification is the DCM, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, published by the American Psychiatric Association, which specifically deals with mental disorders and that is used in North America. and neither the ICD nor the DCM currently regard procrastination as an individual disorder. Höcker, Engbedding, and Rist have created preliminary criteria for diagnosing procrastination. So criteria to decide whether there is a case of procrastination that is also severe enough to warrant treatment. The first of those criteria is that procrastination has occurred for at least 6 months and it occurs at least half of the days. So the problem has to be present for quite some time, at least 6 months, and it has to occur quite frequently. The second criteria is that procrastination is a strong or very strong hindrance to reaching personal objectives. Again, this, as I mentioned before, means that it is a severe problem for yourself. The third criteria is a list of 6 possible further indicators for procrastination, and of those at least 3 have to be present. For example, there is one indicator that says that at least 50% of the time you have allotted for certain activities is actually spent procrastinating, or another one states that there are already physical or psychological issues that result from procrastination, such as digestion issues or mental unrest. Now, the fourth criteria is that the problems and symptoms cannot be better explained by another disorder. This is quite important because there are some other disorders and problems that can create similar problems and symptoms. For example, there are depressions. If you suffer from a depression, you don't have a lot of motivation to do things, and also you most likely do not enjoy pleasant activities as much as you did before, so you might not do them anymore. You don't have a lot of motivation and a lot of drive to do things. So a depression can cause similar symptoms to procrastination. And also procrastination and depressions can be related in a number of ways. A patient can suffer from both at the same time, such as you can have a stomach ache and a cold at the same time. And a depression might occur as a result of procrastination. And it might also be the other way around. Procrastination might occur as a result of depressions. So there are different possibilities here, and there is more research to be done in this area. Other disorders and problems related to procrastination are test anxiety, different kinds of personality disorders, drug abuse, alcohol abuse, and also ADHD. There are a lot of different cases of procrastination, and patients are of course different, but is there something like different types of procrastination? A theory that is quite popular and well known states that there are passive and active procrastinators. And the idea is that passive procrastinators merely put things off to avoid them. Oh no, it's unpleasant, I don't want to do it, I do it later. While active procrastinators actually benefit from the pressure, so they put things off until they are urgent enough for them, and then they really get them done. This is a nice idea, however, in studies it was not possible. Studies failed to prove the existence of those types. Rather, it turned out that there is a very strong correlation between active and passive procrastination, which, simply put, means that if you do one, you most likely also do the other. In the end, those are not distinct types, but those are more different phases over time. If the activity you need to finish is still far away, you procrastinate because you say, oh well, it's not urgent, I can do it later. And once it becomes urgent, you procrastinate to avoid doing it. So, of course, it is a nice idea to be able to say, oh, well, I'm an active procrastinator. I consciously put off things because it works better this way for me. But actually, unfortunately, those types don't exist. So, how does procrastination really work? Where does it come from? Imagine I decided to do my tax declaration today. What happens? First of all, we have the behavior aspect. And in regard to behavior, procrastination is a problem of short-term versus long-term. The short-term perspective is quite simple. In regard to things I would enjoy right now, that would benefit me right now, doing the tax declaration isn't even in the top 10. The long-term perspective, however, is different. If I don't do my tax declaration at all, I will run into trouble with the authorities, and there might be additional stress, additional effort, so it's not a good idea. Furthermore, if I do my tax declaration, I might get a little money back, so this is actually nice. However, those long-term results are not strong enough to really influence my behavior in this moment because they are so far away. They don't control my behavior. So I have to step in and control my behavior myself. Self-control is quite important in regard to procrastination. It is, however, quite difficult because what I need to do is I have to defend this intention to do the tax declaration against the competition from all the things I could do instead in this moment. I could do something pleasant like watching a series, reading a book, playing a computer game, something I would enjoy. Or I could at least do something that is less unpleasant. The floor is a bit dirty, I could vacuum the apartment. Now, this isn't my favorite hobby either, but it is easy to do, it doesn't take a lot of time, and once I'm done, I have a nice brief success. Oh, well done, apartment looks great. And on the other hand, I have to defend this intention to do the tax declaration against competition from all the other times I could do it instead. I could do it in the evening, I could do it tomorrow, next week, next month. So you see, self-control is quite a challenge. And one thing that is quite sinister here is that if I put off doing the tax declaration, the immediate results are quite positive. All the negative feelings connected to the tax declaration, oh, it's so boring, I don't want to do it, I don't like bureaucratic stuff, they suddenly disappear. So I get a negative reinforcement. Bad things disappear. And I will do something else instead that I enjoy more, that is more pleasant or at least less unpleasant. So I have a positive experience there. I have a positive reinforcement. Something good happens. So this is a bit like conditioning. I do something, I get a reward, so I think, oh well, this turned out nicely, I should do it again. So each time we procrastinate, it becomes easier and more likely that we will procrastinate again. And then we have the emotional aspect, because the things we put off are usually connected to negative emotions, like the tax declaration that is so boring and bureaucratic and I don't like to do it. And there might also be anxieties and fears involved. For example, if I need to learn for an exam and I'm not sure if I will pass, or I'm afraid I won't get a good result. People tend to relate procrastination to perfectionism, where I impose overly high standards upon myself. However, there is actually very little relation here. But there is quite a strong impact if I believe that other people are critically watching my efforts and are judging my results. This has quite a large impact. So if I have to create something that is later judged by other people, now this can create fear and anxiety that that creates a lot of negative feelings related to that activity. And here procrastination can serve as a method to control and regulate my feelings. By procrastinating, I can get rid of all of those negative feelings for a moment. But by procrastinating in the long run, those feelings become even worse, because time pressure gets added. Oh, it's so urgent, I have so little time left. And a guilty conscience is added. Oh, I had planned to do it so often and I always didn't do it. And of course, I never have a positive experience like, oh, well, now that I started doing the tax declaration, I see it's not that bad and I see I will be able to do it. But the imagination of how bad and how unpleasant the thing I put off is, it gets worse and bigger. And the more the negative feelings grow, the more likely it is I procrastinate again to get rid of them. So again, we have a kind of vicious circle here. And finally, there is the cognitive aspect, my thoughts. Now, as I said, I have put off this tax declaration. Now, I had planned to do this tax declaration, but I'm not actually doing it. How can this be? I have to justify and rationalize this situation to myself. For example, by saying, oh, well, I have to be in the right mood for the tax declaration. And at the moment I'm not, so it makes no sense to do it now. Or I might say, oh, it has gotten so late, it would make no sense to start now. There isn't enough time today anyway. Better I do it tomorrow when there is more time. Now, there is a lot of self-deception here. For example, I might keep saying to myself, oh, I do it tomorrow, but tomorrow I will really do it. And because I didn't do anything today, tomorrow I will do twice as much for sure. And of course, all of the negative feelings also create corresponding thoughts, such as the tax declaration is so boring, I am not able to cope with how boring it is. Or this exam is so difficult, I will probably fail even if I learn, all my efforts are wasted. Or I'm not able to do it, it's too difficult. All of those kinds of thoughts. So these thoughts, they justify procrastination and they give us permission for procrastination. And the deeper those thoughts are embedded in our minds, and the more they grow and the more we believe in them, the more likely we are to procrastinate again. So we see procrastination is a pattern of behavior that gets established more and more. The more we do it, and the more we do it, the more likely we are to do it again, and the more difficult it becomes to stop doing it. Another thing that helps to better understand procrastination is the Rubicon model. The Rubicon model describes the whole process from a vague idea, oh, I could do that, over specific intention and decision and starting and doing until the activity is finished and everything. And it is also used by Höcker, Engbedding and Rist to explain procrastination. However, discussing it now would make things a bit too difficult, too complicated, and it would also make the video too long. So we will have a look at the Rubicon model in a separate video sometime soon. So, how can we get rid of procrastination? How can we stop procrastinating? I will only discuss this briefly today because we will talk about it next week in the book review. There we will have a look at this book. Literally translated, the title is Today I Will Really Start. Also by Anna Höcker, Margareta Engbedding and Fred Rist. They didn't just write this psychological book, which is somewhat complicated and intended for a professional audience, but also this guidebook that is much more approachable and easier to understand. And in this book they describe how one can perform the anti-procrastination program by themselves at home. Now, unfortunately, this book is not available in English, so you won't be able to do the specific program by Höcker, Engbedding and Rist, but I will describe the general strategies and approaches they use, so you might be able to create a routine for yourself that helps you get out of procrastination. Apart from that, of course, it is possible to seek professional help and to use a therapy to treat procrastination. Here it is important to note that in regard to psychotherapy, procrastination is still a rather new subject, so not every psychotherapist might know how to treat it. Advice given by Höcker, Engbedding and Rist is to approach institutions where psychotherapists are trained, because people who learn the craft now are more likely to have specific knowledge about procrastination and to be qualified to treat it. What you certainly should not put off is to subscribe to the channel, like the video and write a comment. At least I would be quite happy if you do. We will see each other next week in the book review. For today I take my leave. Have a nice day. See you next time.